Welcome back to the channel, folks. I'm Andy, ElectricGeek, and this week we have in for review Superman 2 and Superman 2 the Richard Donner cut on 4K Blu-ray. So I've just finished watching the Richard Donner cut of this, and I have to say it'd been a while, so I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I don't think I've actually seen it before. I thought I had, but when I watched it there, some of the footage was completely new to me, so obviously I hadn't. I must have seen the original theatrical release, the Richard Lester directed one, and for the pretty cheap sum of $19.99, I think having both cuts on 4K, certainly with the Blu-rays included, is pretty good value for money off the bat, and it's quite a nice slipcover that's on it. Taking the slipcover off, as you'll see from this little video that I've done, and it's just your typical case underneath with the same artwork on the front. But it is a 4-disc set, as I had mentioned, so you get Superman 2 and of course the Richard Donner cut on 4K, and then you also get the Blu-ray discs inside. However, I can report that the Blu-ray discs that accompany it are in fact the old ones, so it's not the new 4K scans that have been put onto the Blu-rays. Sadly, it is the original releases, and the Richard Donner cut one in particular has an old VC1 encoding on it, so it is pretty grimy, I have to say. It's using kind of old technology. There's no release date that I can find for that one, but I'm assuming it came out in the early days of Blu-ray, given the kind of old tech it was using for the encoding. But yeah, it's a pretty substantial upgrade. There's no new special features, just the legacy ones that have been ported over, and you get the commentary tracks on the 4K discs of both cuts, and it's two different ones obviously, so it's Richard Donner and Tom Mankiewicz on the Donner cut, and it's two of the producers, their names escape me, that are on the original theatrical cut. It's quite comprehensive. Obviously if you have the Blu-rays previously it'll be nothing new to you, but I didn't have the Blu-rays, so these special features are new to me, and I've just watched all the ones in relation to how they restored the Donner cut, and I did find them pretty interesting. You also get an introduction from Richard Donner that you can play in tandem with the beginning of the movie on both the Blu-ray and of course the 4K version. On to the video, and as I kind of mentioned earlier, Superman 2 was filmed in 35mm, and obviously the studios have gone back and rescanned the original 35mm negative to come up with a new 4K digital intermediate. It's the original 239:1 aspect ratio, so you get the black letterbox bars at the top and bottom of your screen on both cuts, and as far as HDR goes, the new HDR grading is in HDR10 only. So sadly it is just static HDR10 here, no Dolby Vision, no dynamic HDR10 Plus or anything like that. But to be honest, having just watched it, it doesn't really need it. So I watched the Richard Donner cut first, and I have to say I was really impressed with that cut. With regards to the 4K resolution and general picture quality, it's a big step up over that Blu-ray that came out at some point in the kind of mid-noughties. It's not a perfect movie by any means. I mean, the Richard Donner cut is obviously a patchwork quilt of a film, so the grain structure, the consistency of the shots from scene to scene do tend to change, but the stuff that was obviously used from the original theatrical run is the best quality and looks absolutely fantastic, as you would expect an old film from 1980 to look once it's had the 4K treatment. But some of the stuff, like for example, there's a scene with Lewis and Clark that Richard Donner was really keen to use, but it was only ever done as an original screen test. So some of those shots are kind of out of focus and whatnot, and do look a little bit amateurish with regards to the kind of cinematography of it. But they've scrubbed up well, but it seems like that, you know, where you can tell there's inconsistency with it. And obviously the effects back in the day, you know, a lot of the optical overlay stuff, the model shots and all that, are much better realised. However, they can sometimes look a bit fake, especially when Superman's flying. But obviously, you know, it's 1980, can't expect the flying sequences in Superman to look great, especially now that we know what they're capable of today. But yeah, the picture quality is great, and the big upgrade, no surprise, is due to the HDR. So the contrast levels in this film are fantastic. The beginning of the movie with the opening credits against the black, those are really, really inky, and I use an LED TV, and they still looked incredibly dark, and the whites are really bright. A good example of that is when the Kryptonians land on the moon and start kind of picking apart the astronauts. Super, super inky blacks there. Great contrast, and the specular highlights there with the kind of sun reflecting off the astronauts' metallic suits, and obviously the stars against the dark emptiness of space. Absolutely fantastic. When I stuck the Blu-ray on that comes with it, night and day, that seems totally washed out, the blacks are grey, but when you fire the 4K on, massive difference. And with all the exterior shots, it's the primary colours that are the big one here. Of course, anytime we see Superman in his red and blues, looks great. Great saturation there. It's the fine detail in the costumes and the more natural tones that HDR brings for all the exterior shots that are really the winner here. The Niagara Falls scene in particular looks very natural and realistic, much more realistic than I remember it being certainly years ago on DVD. And the same goes for the theatrical Superman 2, although it's more consistent throughout. But the HDR and the colour timing on that is the exact same as what's been done for the Richard Donner cut. Obviously with it being a finished article, not patched together, it's just much more consistent and is probably the better looking disc of the two. Moving on to the audio, we get a big upgrade here also to Dolby Atmos. I was very impressed. I mean, John Williams and Atmos, you can't really go wrong with that. But I was quite surprised at how dynamic the mix was also. There's plenty of big action scenes in Superman 2 when the Kryptonians start causing havoc in Houston. And then obviously there's a big showdown in Metropolis. Plenty of bass for all the explosions. And as I say, the audio is really dynamic. The shootout in the White House, for example, you can hear the bullets pinging all around you. And one scene in particular with regards to height channels is when Lex Luthor escapes from the prison near the beginning of the film and he goes up in the hot air balloon. There's some good height effects there for the balloon kind of arriving with Test Marker comes in, and then there's also a cool effect where you can hear dogs barking when obviously the guards are out looking for them as they escape, and you just kind of hear that sink into your floor and fade away to nothing, you know, to give the effect of the hot air balloon rising away from the carnage of the jailbreak. So yeah, I thought that the Atmos was really good, and it's pretty similar on Superman 2, the theatrical cut, but big upgrade. On the Blu-rays, we just have DTS 5.1, and I did give that a quick blast, and it is noticeable how flat it is in comparison to the Atmos, so you can really feel the audio being moved around your space. So with all that said, can I recommend Superman 2 on 4K Blu-ray? Absolutely, especially for fans of the Richard Donner cut. If you're a fan of the Richard Donner cut, this is a must-have, because that is where the biggest upgrade can easily be seen in both video and audio. I don't think it's quite as much of an upgrade for Superman 2 when it comes to kind of resolution and detail. There is an uptick in the 4K version, but again, it's the HDR that's the big step up here. And of course, the audio, the Dolby Atmos, is great. So fans of either cut won't be disappointed. But as I say, if you're a fan of the Richard Donner cut, you absolutely need to get your hands on this. All three Superman films that have yet to be released, so of course Superman 2 through to 4, are getting the 4K treatment with similar kind of slipcases. But they're all priced at 20 quid. So when you take that into consideration, you're really getting two films here, because both these cuts are entirely different. There's totally different action sequences throughout. So you are getting about, 3 to nearly 4 hours of entertainment out of this, and you're getting the interesting special feature documentaries that kind of go with it, and those commentary tracks I told you about. So value for money, having not even seen 3 and 4 yet, it's definitely 2 that's the best, the pick of the bunch. For 20 quid, you can't really go wrong. It's like a 10 or a cut, really, isn't it? So if I had to stick a number on it, I would say a 3.5 for Superman 2 and a 4 out of 5 for the Donner cut. But that's all I've got for you in this one. I hope you enjoyed that review. If you did, please give the video a wee like, it really helps me and the channel, and consider subscribing if you're hitting me for the first time. You can find me here talking about 4K Blu-ray movies. I do live streams, I do unboxings, and I sometimes do the occasional home theatre, home cinema type video also. So plenty there to get stuck into, and there's a back catalogue there, it'll be popping up now, no doubt. Just before you go though, I've also pre-ordered the Steelbook box set of all 4 Superman films. So when I get a hold of that, I will do an unbox, and I'll give you my thoughts on the 4K transfers of 3 and 4. But until next time, I've been Andy Electric Geek. Keep enjoying and buying 4K movies, and I'll see you in the next video.